Hi, I'm Dan Sweet, Director of Public Relations and Communications for Helicopter Association International, and welcome to our HAI at Work webinars. And today's topic is how to attract and retain a quality workforce. Today, I'm joined by Gretchen Johnson, who is the CEO of the Da Vinci Sky Group and a couple of other companies. We'll get started on that in just a second. Our webinars, as always, are interactive. We do encourage you to ask questions. We will be asking or responding to the questions at the end of the webinars, like we usually do. Easiest way to do it is not to use the chat feature. We do pay attention to chat, but questions in the question module do get priority. Please submit them. They should be either on the side of your screen or the bottom of your screen, depending on how you have your Zoom system set up. This video is being recorded. We will make the recording available as soon as we possibly can on the HAI website. We usually can get that up on the next day, the next afternoon, but sometimes it takes as long as Monday. Now, you'll see that I'm already joined by Gretchen, and she is a professional engineer and the CEO of the Da Vinci Sky Group, which owns OneSpan and Da Vinci Sky Engineering Management. She has over 2 decades of experience in the power grid industry as an engineer, leader, and as a business owner. Johnson holds an electrical engineering degree from Georgia Tech and is a certified professional engineer in Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. She has also earned an MBA from Georgia Institute of Technology and, somewhat relevant, a doctorate degree in educational administration from the University of Georgia. Gretchen, welcome to our HAI webinar.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate it.
I'm looking forward to the topic today. Obviously, we have a huge workforce development issue facing us. And as we talked a little bit about yesterday when we were doing our planning, obviously there's still a lot of movement among pilots and mechanics moving around the industry, people going out to maybe fixed wing. And so I think one of the things you wanted to talk about today was how to address keeping those employees within the company.
Yes, I just as a new business owner, we've been in business for about 5 years. And not only just what it does to your company culture, but also how much money it actually costs you.
Oh, I can only imagine.
The first year, I actually spent around $60,000 onboarding and offboarding. And
Wow.
that really adds up for small businesses.
It does. Well, hey, I'll tell you what, let me turn my camera off and let you turn your screen on, and we'll get started with your presentation, and I'll come back up during the question and answer session.
That sounds great. Thank you. Okay, I hope everybody can see my screen. And I never like for presentations to be boring. And just like Dan said, you guys, I do not have an HR background. I actually come from the School of Hard Knocks as a business owner. And I thought that we would just have a little fun with my titles today. And so I thought we'd start off with a 2012 film called One for the Money. And just like I told Dan, the first year I had that we were in business, my business partners and I, we sat down and we planned a budget that I just thought was spot on. And I had not forgotten anything. Well, at the end of the year, I realized that I was off by $202,000.12, mind you, and $60,000, 60 grand of that had went to onboarding and offboarding employees within the first 90 days. Also, my retention, I was probably running about 62%, give or take, that first year. So even like I just admitted, I was an engineer by trade, and, I just wanted everything, in their stable, all nice and clean. And I realized I wasn't prepared for this. So today I'm just going to share with you some of the things that probably a lot of HR people would say, well, you're really not supposed to do that. That would take up a lot more time. But I always think it's better to be safe on the front end than have to pay for it on the back end. And there was little life lessons that I'm just going to share with you and that some of you may be struggling with, to where you may say, you know what, I probably need to cut my losses and I need to let this employee go, or this person is worth salvaging and I'm going to put some money behind this person and I'm going to work very hard at keeping them and providing them a career path. So let's get started. Well, there we go. So just like we started off, and remember Jerry Maguire was saying, show me the money. Well, one of the best ways that we can hold on to our money as whether you're a small, a medium, and we may even have some larger companies here. And I know that you guys have a little bit more streamlined. You have to be tighter in some areas. You might not have quite the leeway that I have as a small business owner. And just to let you know, altogether I have 72 employees throughout the companies, and we're 4 years old. We do have a couple of certifications like WBNCs and ISOs and 9001 and 14001, and all of those things matter. But really, when you get down to what's going to make you a great company is being able to hold on to your employees. And then how do you do that? And how do you continue to expand that program? And I think after 4 years, I'm at that place right now that my retention is really low, but now I've got to think of different ways to do things. So maybe in a year we can follow up and I can kind of talk about that. But one of the best ways for us, for our company growth, and not just an ROI issue of what we put into our employees, but also having people that are happy doing what they're doing and happy at your company. So employee retention definitely starts at the recruiting process, beginning with the application and screening the applicants and selecting the interviewers and doing your pre-boarding. And then, of course, what follows after that is your onboarding. And I'm going to kind of walk you through what I do. It's a little non-conventional, but it has definitely worked for me. So these are those steps that we just talked about. And I love the movie The Recruit. I don't know if any of you guys saw that, but in 2003, there was a great movie and it was The Recruit. And, you watch to see, the psychological exams that they were doing and the physical demands and, how they would handle certain things. And of course, you want to see that. But just remember that the interviewing process, my dad used to always tell me people can take a vacation from this themselves, but ultimately they're going to come back to who they truly are. So one of the things that I definitely try to do in the recruitment is really allow people to be themselves. And one of the things that I do is I use my staff to recruit. I let them kind of be my billboard. I let them be my sounding ears. Now, it's up to you as a leader of your company, whether you're the CEO, the president, the HR, whatever you're doing and whatever your role is, it's very important that you're also being able to decipher through recommendations. I know that when I first got started, I would call on a recommendation, and a lot of times I would call people that were necessarily not on the application, and they were like, well, I wouldn't hire him again, and I usually, if I got that, I would call 5 more. So for every negative I would get, I would call 5 more, right? Now, if you get 3 negatives coming out of the gate, I think you have your answer. But if 2 out of the 3 references give gleaning references, and you only have 1. Could it have been a personality problem? Could something have happened? Could that pilot have left that helicopter or fixed wing company in a bad place? Whatever that looked like. So if you do get a bad recommendation, I would always encourage you to talk a little bit more. And I would always go back to the interviewee too. So let's get started and let's kind of go through these steps. The first is the recruitment. As I told you, I use a lot of the people that work in our company to be our billboards. And a lot of times they are happy at our company. So now I have an arsenal of resumes that I can go back to, but it definitely was not that way when I first came out of the gate and I was getting started. So in the recruitment, I used a lot of people that necessarily did not work for other companies, but if they were self-employed and they could give me the name of a good pilot, a good mechanic, a good, our group does, we work in the utility space. So we do constructions, inspections, and maintenance on power lines. So a lot of times I would go back to people at the utility to get those linemen resumes, or I would go to other helicopter companies that did they know of anybody. But like I said, it took me about 2.5 years to build that arsenal of resumes. Now it's very few and far between, unless we're going through a really large growth spurt. Last October we went through a very large growth spurt. And with that, we had to go back and we actually had to advertise. Indeed, and some, we utilized those, but LinkedIn, and then also just the people that work at our company, they'll post on their Facebook, and that seems to work really good for us. A little unconventional on the Facebook, but it tends to work. And I myself even participate in that. So, I encourage you to think outside the box, and, with LinkedIn, Indeed, all of your career builder sites, definitely use those, but also use your folks. You'd be surprised at how flattered they are when you're willing to use them. So now let's go to the application process. The application process, I kind of go back and forth between the application process and then the screening process. Then I go back to the application process, and then I go back to the screening process. So let me tell you what I started doing. At first, I had this huge application process, and I thought, this application is wonderful, and I'm going to be able to glean so much information about this individual. And, then I'd get 12 of them. And then I realized I was just going to certain parts of the application. So what I did is I got a little unconventional once again, and our application process is 3 questions on the coming out of the gate. Number 1, what's your name? Number 2, why would you like to work here? And number 3, how many years of experience do you have, if it's a position that requires experience, like a director of maintenance, right? We're not going to have, especially as a director of maintenance, and with me being a younger company, I do make decisions that I don't want someone that is wanting to step up and do that for the first time. So some of those you need to kind of think about your company. And, if you've been in business for 15 to 20 years, you probably could take that risk more so than what I could. So our application process, the very first one, 3 questions only, that's it. Okay. So then once I get all of those, or of course, we have an inbound for those. They get those. And she kind of looks through those. And she brings those, she kind of whittles them down, but most of the time, I'll be honest, I go through all of them myself. And I know eventually I won't be able to, but for right now, I do have that bandwidth. And so I do go through those and I take a look. So, and then that's part of the screening. So we've got the 3 questions, and then we go to the screening, and then we look at the answers. And to me, that has probably been almost humorous. Some of the people that fill those out, you can just see their personality come through, and then other people are very formal and very rote, and but you do get a very good picture of their personality bent, and I think that has been one of the best things, unconventional things that I've done. So once I whittle that down to anywhere from 3 to 6 interviewees, especially if I've got a pile of really good folks that could fill the roles that I'm looking for, then I go back to the application process. And that application process is where I bring in the formal, long, drawn out application. And, I find those to be very boring, but it's necessary to get the check mark in our file jackets. And that's another thing is that I did pretty early on. I started creating file jackets for everything that needed to be in there, because for my company, I know I have to have 52 pieces of paper that make me compliant with HR. And those of you that are new business owners, or you're a very young business owner like myself, I encourage you to get some outside training. And it's grueling. I think one of the, and I'll be talking about like keywords and with keywords. And I really try to talk in layman's terms to my staff, just like I'm talking to you today. You'll hear me every once in a while use diversity and inclusion and, all culture and all those tag words. But you guys, when the rubber hits the road, what we need to be able to do is attract good people through our process, retain them, and then make them loyal employees. And then the final step is up to you as a business owner, how you reward them for loyalty and what their contributions are to your company. And we'll be addressing that a little bit later on. So it's almost recruitment, tiny little application process, screen them, then we toggle back to the big formal application process, and then we get to selecting the interviewees. One of the things that I do is, especially with office staff versus field staff, and again, depending on the dynamics of your company, you need to be thinking about who all this person is going to interface with. And it's not just a management decision, but really it's a company decision. And, are you including your folks? And are you just including that department? My husband is a jet pilot, and I love to use his company as an example, because I kind of got on to him because with the department, they were hiring pilots, and they were just asking the pilots. And I was like, well, first of all, that whole group is men. I said, it's men asking men, but he's got to interface with the scheduler, who is a female. He's got to interview with the marketing girl, female. So it's very important for you to see how they interact with genders. It's very important for you to see how they act with different ethnicities. One of the things that we're really big on, once we get to this selecting interviewees, we bring all of our interviewees into Birmingham, Alabama. And at first I was guys, I'm going to tell you where I made my mistakes, and then I'm going to tell you how I straightened them up. So at first I used to go and pick them up at the airport, especially if they were flying in, or I would be the first one to greet them. No. The Delta lady that wags her finger, that's a no. get them comfortable. Think about their age group, think about, their education level, and try to pair them up as much as you can with someone that kind of has their same footprint, right? And so when we're selecting the interviewees, they're flying in, and I no longer go to the airport to pick them up. I had a young lady to come in and interview for some contract administration, and she was about the same age as the girl who is over marketing. So I sent her to go pick her up, and she came back and she says, "Oh, I think we're kindred spirits," and I also noticed that just the level of anxiety and angst over being in a new place, meeting a new company, knowing that you're going to dinner with them, I no longer do that. I let my staff, I pair them up, I match them up, and I allow them time to kind of get to know somebody else besides, coming out of the gate, meeting the executive staff. So I encourage you to do that and to let your staff participate. There's many different ways that your staff can participate. So once we bring them into Birmingham, usually we bring them in the day before. And with that, we usually have them land around 3 o'clock. And then we go to dinner. And there's a very diverse group that goes to dinner with this possible candidate. I usually, at a minimum, have 2 people that will be in the matching department. And then we usually have 1 executive staff member and then 1 support staff member and then someone from our marketing. So that's kind of the dinner table, right? And if you can do that, I just think that has been great for us to get to know that person and for them to get to know the company, because sometimes people are looking for a company more than a paycheck. And we're also going to kind of address that a little bit later on too. And then once we go through the selecting the interviewees, naturally we go on to our pre-boarding. And I'll be talking a little bit about the onboarding process, and that has really become a very well-oiled process within our company, to where it's literally handoffs to different departments, and that has definitely worked well for us, and we'll be revisiting that. So let's kind of break that down. Everybody's seen the internship, right? And this is the internship kind of looked like what, there was no recruitment process, right? It was very, they just decided, hey, let's do this, right? So we want to be the opposite of the internship, right? So the recruitment process is more important than it's ever been, and that trend will likely continue. And those of us that are over 50, we feel the strain of that. Those, especially you business owners, we feel the strain of that because we know that we're dealing with a very differentiated workforce. We know that a lot of the things that they value was very different from us. They kind of see things across the board that everybody's on the same playing field. And that's very hard, especially when you've built the company and they come in and they expect to start where your salary is, right? So what do you do about that? And what does that look like? And so that's where we're going to talk about our environment, and then, really what we're offering them behind the screen, behind the curtain. What are we looking for on that? And then how are you going to be different? And a lot of times, just let me add, a lot of times that's you as a leader in the company and the other members of your executive staff. Are you different than the leadership? Because we all see the slogans on LinkedIn. The main reason that people leave is because of their boss, right? So you got to be a different kind of boss. And we've also got to understand what's important to them. So we all saw the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, and if we are really truthful, I always say there's a difference between happiness and joyfulness, right? Happiness is things that are happening around you, and joyfulness is that's an inside job, right? That's an inside job for you, and that's also an inside job for your employee. You can't determine their joyfulness, but what you can determine is their happiness. And in the pursuit of happiness, we really saw the guy just struggling with, I really hate this job, but I'm finally stuck here. But hey, I'm willing to do anything to get out of here. And we want to be able to retain our employees. We don't want them to follow that road that, hey, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to go create my own happiness. So again, we said joyfulness is something, that you internally are responsible for yourself, and that goes for our employees. But happiness are all the extrinsic factors that are going on all around your employees. It's what happens at the water cooler, how you have the office set up. It's, when they're greeted every day coming through the door, what does that look like? So one of the things that I feel that I messed up on when we first started opening our doors is I wanted to portray that, we were not really a startup, but we were. We were. And, so provide a realistic job preview to your prospective employees. And, if you're a 20-year business, tell them these are the things that we're still hoping to change. These are the things that we're looking forward to. Because if you don't have a future, if you personally do not have a future, then they definitely don't have a future. So give them a realistic perspective, and one of the things too, there's a fine line between that because, and I'm just going to give you a real life experience. The other day, I was hiring a new director of maintenance. And with this new director of maintenance, we had discussed his salary. And one of the things is he said, but he came back and he says, well, I know I'm going to have a ceiling level at X amount of dollars. And at that point in time, I had to give this, even though he had already accepted the job, I still wanted to share that I have other intentions, but yet they're not developed. But I want you to know that I don't think that that's where you're going to tap out, because if you do what I think that you can do, I'm also going to take this expansion and you're going to be a part of it. And sometimes you don't necessarily have to tell your exact business plan, but, let that person know they have hope and a future to be able to grow with you. So a lot of times, we don't want to say, oh, this is our business plan and this is this is what we're going to do. My executive staff, we're exceptionally protective of our business plan, because business plans, like I said, they're just plans. That doesn't necessarily mean that that's written in stone, but don't be afraid to share what your pathways are in the future. Next, right from the start, tell the candidate the value and purpose of your organization and how it will benefit them. And even more importantly, how the business plays a meaningful role in society and improves the lives of others. Guys, I can tell you story after story after story about several of our employees that we have two ministries that we work in, or you can call them outside interests. And our groups, they can participate in them or they don't have to. Either way, it really doesn't matter. And but I truly got to know 3 employees individually during planning a gala event. We have we've got one of the things that we do, and it's it's about community nationwide. We all participate, and we have a large gala that we host. And really, when I got to know some of, especially these three, they just came alive during planning this gala event, and just what it was going to mean. And I let them pick the organizations that were going to give the money away to. And also, I think that there's several lessons there, is that just seeing when they're able to be in different types of roles, but yet they're able to make a difference in other people's lives. And then also, handing over some of that and letting them choose. That has been huge in our company. And so if you don't have something where you're really being able to make a difference and they have the option to participate, try thinking about that. And just also participate in that as a business leader, and you'll be able to see where their true talents lie. The next one is the recruitment process should allow prospective employees to fully inform you of their talents they are offering to your business. And a lot of times, I think that we find that through personal discussions. We have an open door policy where I'm at, and a lot of times I get in there a little earlier so that I'm not coming in at 8 o'clock and then leaving directly at 5 o'clock. But I've got my early birds, and then I've got the ones that want to come in at 8:30 on the nose, and then they want to stay till 5:30 or 6. And I can honestly tell you that I really get to know my employees and their talents before work, during lunch, and after work. So if there's any way that you can have that open door policy during that time, or if your office is separate and it's kind of off, get out there and mix and mingle and let them know that you're available before and after work. And then I always take my lunch and I go and I eat where they eat. And that is really when you get to know your folks. And then the last, many businesses are incorporating design thinking. We're going to talk about design thinking, but you know me, I hate slogans, and design thinking, I'll tell you what it is in layman's terms, but which is all about empathy and seeing employees as fellow human beings rather than workers into the recruiting process. And when I have that first phone call during the recruitment process, I always kind of start off personal, and most of the time I start off the conversation like this. I'll ask if they're available at 5 or 6, and then I'm at home. One of the things that I noticed about myself is that when I was sitting at my corporate desk overlooking the corporate parking lot, watching the corporate cleaning staff, I had a different air to myself. So now when I call and I make that call, I'm usually at home, very relaxed. I know that I'm not going to be interrupted by anyone. I'm not in a corporate environment, and I make that call, and it's more of I got your resume, and I'm honest. I say, I really enjoy having these conversations after work hours, because that way I'm not interrupted. I'm comfortable at home. And is this a good time to talk? And it just eases the tension. And I really think that allows people to really be themselves too. And really what design thinking is, in a nutshell, is just putting yourself in the potential employee's position. And just really having that empathy of being an interviewee. So think about those things and see what you can do, and see what you like in that list and then what you don't like. Also think about your process now, and, does it need to be tweaked, or is it this part is going very well, but we need onboarding help. But that was part of me trying to whittle down that $60,000, because you guys at that time, that was a lot of money for me to lose. So Dirty Dancing, we all remember Dirty Dancing. And when, she just really wanted to belong, right? So inclusivity, another tag word, so guys, when you are going to those HR events, trust me, you're going to walk away there and you're going to feel like bombarded with the language. But inclusivity, I don't get over into the political stuff of inclusivity. I'm just talking about just making everyone feel a belonging at your company, that you are impartial to people, that you're encouraging your employees to be yourself. Because if they're not themselves and they're coming in and they're having to put on an air or whatever, you will eventually, number one, lose that employee. Productivity is definitely going to be decreased. And then the frontal lobe that attaches to the limbic, which makes decision making, will be impeded. So it's very important that you're allowing your employees to be themselves. And, you want to foster open communication. You definitely want to foster that culture. Again, culture, another tag word, right? And it may seem cliche, but each of us really we're on our own special snowflake. Encouraging inclusivity and a sense of individuality in employees has been shown to create greater retention. But, we definitely want to retain, but also think about the decision making. I always like to take that one step further, because you don't want pressure where they aren't making good decisions. They feel pressure from middle management, and also definitely keep your finger on middle management. Middle management can definitely impede on what you're doing. So that middle management, that middle row, they've definitely got to buy into what you're trying to do through the recruitment and the retention process. So make sure that you're creating that environment where everybody is able to be themselves and they're operating within that, so that they feel a part of the company, they're making good decisions, and they don't feel like they're not welcome there, because eventually that's going to cost you money. Tommy Boy, I think when I used to do a lot of sales, I used to use this one all the time. So once employees' basic needs are met, other factors come into play when it comes to loyalty to the company and job retention. And during, with this one, I love reading a lot of what Granger talks about. He says, as an employee, I need to have the equipment and direction to get my work done, and I need to be paid fairly, and I need to feel safe when it comes to my work. Once those are in place, then the other critical factors start to really matter. So let's talk about that. That's a lot of info. But so basic needs. You know what? I have employees with very different needs. I have one employee that has a special needs child. I also have one of my support staff. She is key to the success of my operation, and she has an elderly mother, and she is an only child. Do I do things for her that are very different than what I do for other people? You can bet your bottom dollar. And so sometimes a one size fits all is not necessary. Now, those of you that are in large corporates, if we've got any of those people on here, I encourage you to get with your HR, figure out who those people are, and then also, and that's a whole different ballgame, trying to figure out who has those family situations. But again, that goes back to the middle management and the upper leadership. Like, my middle management will get in more trouble with me if I find it out before they find out. So your middle management, they should be keeping their fingers on the pulse of those employees. And like I said, if I find that out before, because remember, I'm finding those things out before work, during lunch, and then when I stay a little bit later, or when we're doing training, when I bring everybody into Birmingham and we might be out, skeet shooting, and I'm just sitting there, kind of mulling around. I better not find out those things before middle management. So make sure that your middle management is buying in to your employee recruitment and retention. So those basic needs. So let's talk a little bit about what I do with Lisa. Lisa, she basically she keeps the corporate calendar, so I know where everybody is on that day, which basically creates my hotel audits because we're a traveling workforce. As I said, we're in the utility space. So every month, anywhere from $35,000 to $60,000 on hotels, depending on the size of my cruise. And, with Lisa, she needs flexibility, but also I need her flexibility because there's sometimes on Saturdays when a purchase card, a P card, or a credit card isn't working, and I need her to get in touch with whoever did what. So Lisa, sometimes she needs to take her mother to the doctor, or then when her mother had COVID, and being able to give her the flexibility and the things that she needs to have the equipment to be able to work. So I get her call really late at 9 o'clock. She doesn't have a Moxie that she can take to go and take care of her mother. So immediately we went into, we're going to get you everything that you need. Don't worry, get up there, and we will have everything shipped to you by tomorrow morning, right? So even depending on the equipment, our pilots, one of the things that I did not even realize is that we were working a job, and one of our pilots, he had decided to was leaving being a pilot, but he wanted to go work with his brother. And during an exit interview, we said, would you like to have an exit interview? We would like to pick your brain because we want to be better. And he had been on a job, and between the mechanic's schedule and his schedule, it wasn't meshing. And so we also were doing a 100-hour down there on the helicopter. And so for like 2 days, he did not have transportation. So, he was Ubering everywhere. And so he begins to tell the upper management about this. And it was like, that's an easy thing to fix. Just one extra rental car, we can definitely do that. But, so use your exit interviews to figure out. And a lot of times that's when you figure out what a specific department needs, or surveys. We've got also an email that it blanks out the email, and they can just report things to us. I had gotten an email the other day that someone's niece had passed away, and this is where the funeral is going to be. And again, no name, you don't know who's sending it, and I know in leadership, and especially when you have funded a company, you have built it organically, and you have brought it from birth to fruition. Sometimes, guys, especially within the first 2 or 3 years, you're like, well, look at what all I'm doing. Well, guess what? You have to do more. And you might as well just go ahead and accept that and understand that that's your position as a leader. Otherwise, you wouldn't have grown it. You wouldn't have been able to grow it from birth to fruition. So it's very important that you also step into that role with lots of grace, and you realize that there's things that I'm going to have to do as a leader, even though I built this from scratch, and I understand there's dollar signs behind it, and it puts a lot of stress on our budget, and I get that. But you know what? You won't have a company if they all decide to leave and you do not retain them. So fair wages. One of the things that I do is I look at the economy. I have, and after this, Dan can give you my phone number and email, and I'll be glad to talk about tools that I use. I'm going to talk a little bit about those toward the end, but I'll be glad to share what I do to make sure that wages are correct, and even how we actually stair step our employees, and just what you do to make sure that on that side you're fair and equitable, so that you do not have any compliance violations with labor laws and HR issues. And I'll be glad to talk individually anytime on it. So Opportunity Knocks, I don't know if any of you saw that movie. I remember I saw it. I was actually in Germany as a military wife at that time. And you'd go down to the post and you would watch it. Now, I was so excited that I was actually going to get to see a movie. So I remembered that movie and I thought, I'll use that. So again, Global Engagement Trends reports opportunities for learning and development was one of the most impactful drivers of intentions to stay with a company. And let me reiterate again, on LinkedIn and on those inspirational quotes, you never want your staff to feel like to get a promotion, they've got to leave you. So my question as a business owner or someone in HR, what are you doing and what are the questions that you're asking for from your staff about what they eventually want to do? Where do you see yourself in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? And I love it. There was one guy that I brought on and I said, where do you see yourself in 15 years? And he said, well, why don't I say this? Why don't I say where I see you first? He said, I see you on the beach and me sitting in your chair making money for you. And I thought, I love it, So think about that. What opportunities are you doing? And then what kind of levels are you asking your folks to step into? One of our field guys right now, he's serving as a superintendent, but one day he happened to, we were standing around a bonfire and he said, one day I think I want to be an estimator. And I said, really? I never knew that. And he said, yeah. He started talking about how his dad was an estimator for a ground contracting company. And I said, we need to talk about that. I said, why don't you call me on Monday after you get out of the field and let's talk a little bit more of that. And then guys, follow up. If you say it, you do it. And follow up and then talk about that. So one of the things that I started doing is, especially with my field guys, is that we have daily rates. So it was very easy for me to nab him and say, hey, I've got some RFPs. I'd like for you to take a look at it and, give me your thoughts on it. And then let's get back and just clock in that day like you're in the field. And I'd like for you to help me with it. So one day a week, he is doing this. So by the time that he's ready to leave the field, I'm not literally having to leave my job, and that middle management is not having to leave his job to train this gentleman for what he's wanting. We're creating exposure. We're giving little breadcrumbs of exposure. And, what are you doing for that? And that way you don't have to do it all at once. And, basically shut down the department. And then you get backlogged on 14 RFPs that are all due in 2 days, right? Because you've been training. So start creating those steps within your steps and those steps within your employees that, this is where you can go. So even though the natural path of progression for him would have been to go to a project manager or going to a construction manager, you know what? I realized that wasn't even in his repertoire. So, my question to you is, how are you going to find that out? Are you going to do that through a survey? How are you going to do that? And I've got several things that I use, and I'll be glad to share those with you. Death of a salesman. I think that we've all heard about this. So many businesses provide onboarding to new employees. That is, they provide training that enables new employees to acquire the necessary knowledge, skills, and behaviors that they need to perform the job, right? But rarely is onboarding continued after the first week they are hired. Think about that, guys. I was the driver of that ship. The first year, I thought I had this wonderful onboarding and employee experience. And then in 1 week, I thought that was going to get it and that they were going to feel like a part of this company. So I had to go back and I had to redo that. So with my onboarding, definitely the onboarding process, meeting the compliance, and especially those of us that are involved where we've got safety and we've got DOT and we've got pilot logs, and, we're trying to get people used to whatever software you're using for your maintenance. All of those things are very important, but recurrent training and continuing to basically onboard. And again, that kind of goes back to where we're engaging our employees outside of true meetings that are set up to discuss X, Y, and Z. But what are we doing for the onboarding afterwards? So I kind of call this we call it continuing education. We use that term. We also pay for that, but I do cover myself, just for those of you that are like, yeah, but I don't want to pay for their education. And then they leave me 2 or 3 weeks later. And so I do have documents that kind of, if I'm investing in you, then this is what you owe me for, and this is how many months that you are going to have to stay here. And, I'm not saying as a business owner, create exposure and liability for yourself should they leave. And then not only do you get the hit on the money that you spend on the onboarding, but then also you're bombarding yourself with another expense of continuing education. But continuing education, making sure that they are participating in a variety of activities at your company. For instance, and you guys, again, I told you I came from the school of hard knocks when it comes with this onboarding and retention and, keeping employees engaged throughout all the processes. Is we were setting up a safety committee, and I noticed that my business partner had put the marketing person on the safety committee. And I thought, that is just the stupidest thing. Why is he doing that? And so I went back and I said, don't you think that's a waste of her time? That, that's just a free lunch, and I don't know what they do. Right? Because I wasn't on the safety committee. I just get the minutes from the safety committee. Right? So anyway, so I decided to go to the safety committee. Right? And then when I heard her and I saw her interacting with the linemen, the pilots, our director of operations, our director of maintenance, and it was amazing. So integrate your folks so that you're constantly exposing them to different things within your company. Because I always say, what if something happened to you and you weren't sitting where you are, whether you're an HR director or whether you're the owner of the company? What if something happened to you? Who can step in and who's going to be able to take your place? And by exposing people to a variety of experiences within your company, to me, that is continuing onboarding. They're getting to learn different facets of the company. And then two, they very well may say, you know what? And this is so funny, speaking about my marketing girl, she's one of the folks that I actually think eventually would make an excellent safety person now that I've seen her on that safety committee. So, but she's pretty young with the company, but, definitely, those conversations will be had with her eventually, because I want her to understand what all the opportunities are at the company. And I think that's another thing that it's very important for you to create. A lot of people are like, well, this is your lane and this is your lane and this is your lane. Yes, and that is true. I totally agree with you. But exposure to other things in the company is not going to take them out or change their job description. They still have to have their performance objectives within that job description that they've got to meet. So, but exposure allows them to say, you know what? I think I've done all I can do here, and I think I'd like to go to X. And just like Dan said, we own 3 different companies, and one of my gentlemen that is in the OneSpan group, he came to us and said, you know what? I really think my resume, and I really like the work module over in the Da Vinci Sky Engineering and Management, and I think I'd like to try my hand at that. Had he not been at the training where we bring in all the companies together, he would not have had that exposure. So if you have several subsidiaries up under your mothership, don't be afraid to do training all together. And with that training, also don't be, create where people can talk about what they do, and create that atmosphere so that they're not afraid to ask, hey, can I go over to that other subsidiary? Toy Story. I couldn't decide if I was going to name this Toy Story or if I was going to do Beauty and the Beast or Old Yeller. Just, trying to figure out, because by providing additional vacation time to seniority, offering retention bonuses, in my company, we kind of do that all at the end of the year. And whether it's a corporate bonus, whether it's for our linemen, our pilots, our maintenance department, or even over at our other subsidiary, that's very heavy resume. That's a little bit different beast than, what we do up under the OneSpan. But linking benefit plans with payouts such as stock options to employees who have been with the company for a predetermined number of years. You're just creating loyalty by looking at their contributions to your company. And remember, without those people, you're not going to have a company. The people is the company. You aren't the company. The logo is not the company. Your trucks, your assets, you can have all of that, but if you don't have people, you don't have a company. So what are you doing for loyalty? And, again, that kind of goes back to Lisa's story, or to my other guy that kind of, I work him a little bit different, just because, he has a special needs child, and do I ever get pushback from that? I never have. And as long as you're in compliance with that and you're meeting those objectives, you're good. Next, we are almost finished. Guys, hold on. I'm going to close this chat box. Wolf on Wall Street, again, that was another one. I just wanted to remember all the things he would do for his employees. Now, I'm not suggesting you do that on the yachts and things like that, but think outside the box. What do your employees need? One of the best things that we do with our employees when they come on to our company is we give them a questionnaire. If I was going to give you $50, if I was going to give you $100, if I was going to give you $1,000, what would you do? What would be the best kind of bonus that I could give you? Do you want time off with your family? Do you want me to send you on a vacation? What does that look like? Would you want to sit in first class, for me to fly you first class for your next 3 jobs, give this whole laundry list, and I'll be glad to share my laundry list with you. That's not a big secret. And then let's just talk about ease. And I think this is my last slide. Guys, I have vetted, I have made mistakes, and I have vetted payroll companies. I probably used 4, and I finally landed on one. And just the ease. And by this, we don't, remember when I was talking about your employees, you don't want them to feel for their frontal lobe to get pressure to where it affects their limbic making decisions. Now, remember, your frontal lobe feeds into your limbic, which makes you emotional. It makes you make bad decisions. So there's a lot of things that you as an employer can do to make things easy on your employees. One of the things one of the best things I ever did was getting this one payroll company, because my employees, they can go into their portal and they can move things around. They can see what we're doing. They can see their next paychecks. They can borrow against their next paychecks. There's just a variety of things that this one portal allows me to do. And I had one gentleman that just couldn't thank me enough for I think it was his dad or somebody had hit some hard times, and he needed to borrow some money against his next check, which was going to be in 4 days. And he said, I wouldn't have been able to do that had you not offered this. And then not only that, the same payroll company allows me as a business owner to do a variety of things that I necessarily wouldn't be able to do with just the regular style of payroll companies. And I'll be glad to share that with you also. Another thing that I did is create a company catalog. And guess what? I didn't create the catalog, and neither did my marketing girl. Right? We brought in a team. We brought in, 2 linemen. We brought in a mechanic. We brought in executive leadership. We brought in one guy that works on DaVinci Sky E&M, and we let them devise the company catalog. We also set up other accounts to where when we're giving them that we give a set amount of money for each employee to go shopping in the company catalog. And just by having that, and then, it automatically draws down, what they pay, and it automatically ships, and I'm not having to deal with huge, big vendors out there that do a sorry job. And then, the employee's like, I've got orange stitching where my red should be, right? And then, it takes 2 weeks to get it back, and then 5 people within the company in the back office working on it. So just, creating that ease, anything that you can do with ease. Another thing that I started doing is I started looking at different types of medical programs. And that, I don't have to just go to Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I actually, even though I'm a very small company, I put out an RFP. And that, guess what? You're going to bid on it, and you're going to tell me what you're going to do for my linemen, for their wrists, their elbows, their shoulders. What does that look like? And then what are you going to do for my people? Not what are you, I'm not going to sit there and just say, you get to just be subpar, take X amount of money per month, and then expect for me to be happy. So what are you going to do, and what are you going to step up to do? And especially if you have traveling crews, this medical thing that I do, now they literally can go onto an app, they press the app, and then they make their appointment. And if they're in the field and they've got a sore throat or a sinus infection, just the normal stuff, not workman's comp stuff, but, where they're really sick and we're needing to get them attended to, because if they're that sick, we definitely can't put them back on a plane and send them home. So this medical program, again, I'll be glad to share, just really has made such a difference. And again, I get a lot of feedback on this program. And then last but not least, social media. One of the things that I do is during the onboarding, I bring the social media into the onboarding process. So when they come in to onboard, they go to different people who handle different aspects. getting them all set up on their payroll, understanding how to utilize the company catalog, getting your welcome packet, getting all registered on social media if they want to. Now, some employees, they're not going to want to be on social media, and that's fine. But those that already have a media profile on LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever, get them set up. You don't want that person representing another company when they're sending out, pictures of your company. So go ahead and get that set up. But, creating that ease, I think, helps feed into the retention of our employees, and taking all the small stuff off the plate. Really, a lot of employees, 72% of employees left because of the stupid stuff. The other, I think it was like 22% left because of bad bosses. So think what you can do to make things easy on the employee, and then how you can be a good employer. And I think, Dan?
I am here. Gretchen, let's go ahead and close your screen.
Perfect.
I will work on a quick slide to provide your contact information for our people. If you can, don't mind stop sharing. There we go. If you can tell me what your email address is, and we'll share that with the attendees.
Perfect. It's G Johnson at OneSpan Power, ONESPAN power.com.
Okay, then what's a good phone number for you? I'm going to have the slide up, and I'm going to have the slide up in just a second.
770-715-4550.
Okay, let me get this shared here real quick. And then we don't have very many questions today, so I think you did a great job of answering. There we go. Now people can figure out how to respond to you, because I know you were more than willing to very generously share a lot of the information you were providing today. And so one of the questions that occurred to me, I've been in the industry for about almost 30 years. There are going to be some people who just are always looking for greener pastures. Do you find that common, and do you put a lot of effort into trying to retain those people, or do you try to weed those people out before they come into your company?
Yeah, very good question. Those, honestly, guys, I've had 2 of those employees that stood out, and you know what? I think that was very early on. And the more that you participate in where I was talking about going back and forth in between the 3 questions, then you're going into the screening, and then you're going back to the big application, that will help you to kind of see that. One of the biggest indicators of that is when they talk negatively about prior employment. And that is the one key factor that I see. And I think that is a red flag. And I do think that, and basically let's just call them what they are. They're malcontents. And they're always going to be looking at that. Now, if you've owned your business for quite some time, you've probably gotten very good at identifying those people. But early on, I had to do a better job at that. And then when they were always talking about the past, to me, that's the number one indicator that they're never looking for stability in the future.
A very interesting concept. Gretchen, I think you've done a brilliant job of conveying the information today. It sounds like you put a lot of time and effort into making sure that not only is the person qualified, but they're fitting your culture, which I think is so important when we are, even still trying to hire today. I know that there's a shortage. I know that people are scrambling to find employees, but trying to just fit a person into a slot because because they need to fill it may not be the best thing to do in the long run, it sounds like.
No, we tried that, especially when we were a startup, because a lot of folks didn't want to come to a startup. So I had to get very advantageous up front, and I'll just be real honest, especially if there are any of you on here who are a startup. I had to get very advantageous with salary, and then too, a lot of it is about your transparency. I think as a leader, and I think that is a very big indicator. Again, creating that job profile to where we are a startup. I'm going to pay you X. I started off, I think I did 2%, just, for clarification. I think I did 2 to 3% over and above what my competitors were doing to get them. But then too, I back-ended that with a lot of time off and things that I could afford to do. And again, like clothing allowances. And then also I did a lot of things with touches on their family, when I knew that the linemen had been out in the field for quite some time. I would send thank you notes that, I appreciate you holding down the fort at home while your husband's working. Here's a $50 gift card. And those kind of things went a long way when we were first coming out of the gate. And I still do those things today.
Okay, wow. So I think right now we are in a market where the job seeker has a lot more flexibility. How do you think that's going to have changed the industry overall? It used to be that helicopter pilots would take any job they could just because there were so few jobs. Is this going to shift the balance, I guess, of, I don't want to call it power, and I also don't want to call it a salary base or anything like that. But is this going to make things a little bit more equitable between the employee and the employer?
I think so. And also, one of the things I really think, let's talk about the COVID experience, right? But it did teach us some things, despite what all we want to think. But when my business partner and I first started, it was like, we need all executive team leaders to be located in Birmingham, And we kind of got away from that because we realized that, we were working the same. And actually, a lot of our group actually did better at home than they did at the office. So there's two things. Never be afraid of technology, and especially operators that are doing things, whether you're doing your maintenance and you're keeping everything by hand on your helicopters, or you're logging into a portal. I think there are several indicators that's going to give businesses leverage. Being able to work and being able to get the best of the best, because you're not requiring them to move to you. And I think that that's really important. And this is it. If someone is not doing their job, you have got to know that it will bubble to the surface. Now, you may not find out for 4 or 5 months, but eventually you are going to know. And then another thing is that every day I have certain departments that I touch every single day. So on Mondays, it's maintenance, because keeping the aircraft flying keeps the linemen working, which keeps the admin staff churning, right? So I start off with the maintenance to the aircraft first. So there's a variety of things, but think about your cycle, and then that's how I structure my week as a leader, in having touches on each individual group. So think about that, but think too that you can leverage technology so that you can have the best of the best.
Okay, Gretchen, let's go ahead and wrap things up. I really appreciate that you were so willing to share your experience, your knowledge, your education in trying to help achieve the greatest workforce a company can. I think that that's honestly a good way to look at it. You are trying to bring in people that fit not only the job requirements, but also your company culture, and then trying to keep them employed and happy over the long term. So greatly appreciate your time and assistance on this today.
Absolutely. Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Okay, well, we do have one question. Let me jump in here. Okay, it was basically just a comment, a compliment for you, Gretchen, great guest. A lot of companies and government entities can find a lot of improvement by integrating her advice. My police department would never think of some of the things, kind things or attention to employee happiness that she mentioned. I appreciated her thoughts and time. So there we go. It's a great way to close things out.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you everybody for joining today. I'm going to just do in my housekeeping one last time here. Jump into that. There we go. We do have a survey coming to our attendees today. Please take a few minutes to share your thoughts on today's topic. Please share your thoughts on future topics. I'm always looking for new ideas for our webinars for HAI at Work. I'm grateful for any input that you have. HAI is also a membership organization. If you're not a membership or a member, we encourage you to take a look at it. We've got a lot of opportunities for education, for safety, for the future of the industry. If you have any questions or suggestions on how we could do better, Jim Viola, our president and CEO, could not be with us today. He's at a seminar with the leaders of other aviation organizations trying to brainstorm these same ideas. But he always wants to hear from you. So please send Jim an email at president@rotor.org and share any thoughts or ideas you have with him. If you're looking for more information on the helicopter industry, two great sources we have. Both of them are free. Rotor Magazine and Rotor.org, and Rotor Daily. Rotor Magazine is our quarterly print magazine. We also do digital subscriptions or digital versions as well. The only cost for that is if you're outside the US, we do charge a small fee for international mailing. Rotor Daily is free. It comes out every business day. It's a daily news aggregator. We try to sift out and find the top 10 or 15 to 20 stories that are relevant to the helicopter industry that specific day. That particular item is very free. It's completely digital. And the easiest way to subscribe to either or both is to go to rotor.org/subscribe, and we'll be happy to help you join that. That does conclude our webinar for today. Gretchen, we are grateful for your attendance as well. Your participation, your insight was incredibly valuable, and I'm sure that the attendees enjoyed it. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you again in 2 weeks.